Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. I'm Ross Karl and we're back to give you plenty of analysis this week because Super Rugby did an about turn and we had some big blowouts this week. Of course, joining me on the show, James Parsons in Auckland as ever, former Blues captain and All Black, and over in Australia, in Perth, at another airport, Jiffer? We've gone to another airport. Bryn Hall from the Crusaders is about to make his way to Canberra. Bryn, what's going on? You're off the bus, you're about to board the plane.
I'll tell you what, mate. It's been an interesting half an hour to try and get ready for this podcast because when our bus drivers, we had two buses, and the very first one didn't end up working. So you can imagine me, Jip, as a very detailed man at the time, was stressing through the lounge to be here. But look, happy to be here and a lot more positive than I was last week, considering a good result against the Perth Force on the weekend.
Melbourne Airport security cleared the entire place for Jipper. I'm presuming that you just had to mention that you were coming on Aotearoa Rugby Pod to the security and they just let you straight through into the lounge, did they?
They didn't actually, because we had to go through obviously check in and get your laptops out at the terminal. So and it was actually quite a busy setup. So no, unfortunately it wasn't. And yeah, Jip knows me too well that I was sweating bullets. But happy to be here right now.
We can see that beating off your forehead right now. Before we get on to what will be the match of the round between you guys and the Brumbies next weekend, let's have a look at our quick fire round and let's start with the match of the round from this weekend just gone, Jipper. What game did it for you? Oh, you have to ask. What game did it for you this weekend?
Oh, 70 points, mate. It was a thing of beauty. That first 40, actually the 30-minute mark to 40-minute mark was something special. Absolutely loved it. Was at the game live and it was great viewing.
So the Blues absolutely on a demolition derby. Was that it for you?
Oh, I'll tell you what, yeah, the Brumbies getting their win was pretty impressive. But look, some of the stats here I've got, Jip, no doubt you'll love hearing this in that round against the Blues. Look, 47 unanswered points after starting 14-0. Great way to come back, and they scored 66 points before the Rebels actually scored a try after scoring 2 tries in that first half. So, look, it was impressive. You know, they had 34 defenders beaten, 20 offloads, 14 clean breaks. The Ioane brothers scored 5 tries. Offload kings with all their forwards. So look, it was you take away that first start. It was awesome, bloody impressive to watch, and I can imagine, Jip, as a fan, it was awesome to see.
Yeah, mate. I actually think the start was crucial to kicking them into gear. So that, you know, they'd sort of been on that flat spell after the derby games, and it was almost like, oh man, we've got to turn it on here, and it just sparked them into reaction. So, and man, from then on. It was simply beautiful. The big fellas offloading up the middle of the park was something special, let alone the try-scoring antics of Mark Talea.
Oh, yeah, look, it was good. Let's get a little bit more into that really soon. Player of the round, who was it for you? From the Blues game, I presume?
No, I would really like to say Rico. I've tried every way to convince myself, but I think Nick White was the difference in that big derby game, just his kicking game, the way he orchestrated that. And the way he played in general, I thought he was fantastic, and he's definitely someone you've got to shut down if you're going to beat those Brumbies.
What about you, Brenner? Where are you looking?
Oh, look, there were some great performances. Look, you look at those Blues games. I thought Rico had his best game of the year, and then even a couple of, Will Jordan was outstanding on the weekend with Lester Fainganuku as well. But look, yeah, I think considering what was on the line in Hamilton, Nick White was outstanding, and look, we've done a bit of preview around him, knowing what's coming in Canberra, but look, his game management, his kicking was immense, and also just his general kind of game management was world class.
Okay, Bren, what about the team that's progressed the most this round? There are some options: the Canes, the Blues, the Crusaders.
I think considering where we were, I think we could probably be in that conversation. But look, I think continually progression is the Brumbies. Look, they've had 3 wins against 3 New Zealand teams, and they've got us coming this week, and they've got the Blues, which are going to be a nice test for them. But look, anytime you can get a win on New Zealand soil, we looked at last year how hard it was for Australian teams to win in New Zealand. So look, I'm going for the Brumbies for that progression and just winning in New Zealand and what was on the line for them in that game.
What about you?
I think it's the Hurricanes for me. Reason being, with the Chiefs slipping up, there's a real opportunity for them to get into the home quarters and push their case to be back here. And I just think they've been there or thereabouts against all the bigger teams all year and just lost. So if they can get some form, some confidence up, I think they're in a really good position after the weekend, because as we know, the Drua hasn't been easy. So I think they probably progressed the most, and they used a lot of their squad, so they built that depth as well leading into the finals.
Sorry, I'm having trouble not having the ding dong in
Yeah,
my ear.
I know.
Things happening in the background. What about the team that regressed the most?
Maybe the Reds. I know they're missing O'Connor, but it's just they probably should have put that one away. Very hard team to win, but it was great to see the Highlanders come back the way they did.
Yeah, and we had a lot of questions about that game, Bryn, about which way it would go, and it was good to see what the Highlanders could do.
Yeah, I think it was. I've gone the same for the same as Chip. I think, if you're looking at that start, they were 12-0 start. The Reds at home get off to a good start. They're probably kicking themselves again, not getting that result. And, the game was in the balance. That 54th minute, it was 19-13. And the injection of Folau Fakatava really came over top and helped that kind of result go into the Highlanders' way. Because, look, you could say that they might not get their result just due to what they've been through. But, look, with 20 minutes to go, the two tries that was around Folau Fakatava and that injection off the bench, I thought was a massive difference in how that Highlanders were able to get that win in Suncorp.
Now, when you go over to play the Brumbies this weekend, Bryn, it's going to be one of those great matches of the round where there's quite a lot at stake. I mean, we've talked a bit about the Brumbies in recent weeks. We've talked about how this is a team on the go. Are they legitimate title contenders? And the answer is, yep,
yes.
Hell yes, they are. You're third on the table, they're second on the table. This, if things remain the same, could be just like the semi-final you play, and you guys are going to need to beat them away if it stays the same. This is a big game.
Yeah, it is, mate. It is. And look, we're not thinking more so around what's on the line outcome-wise for the future of the competition. I think for us, look, they're just an impressive side. Like, me and Jeff have talked about it all year long around what they can bring. Look, their set piece is strong, whether it be their line-out more that we saw on the weekend and we've seen throughout the duration of this competition. They've got the ability to be able to kick off Nick White with his great contestable game. As Noah Lolasiers, I find, is finding some really good form and some game management role around his development again this year. And then you've got the outside backs with Ikitau, Tom Banks and Tom Wright, and it's also their kicking game as well. And haven't even touched on their forward pack. Their forward pack's been one of them games through the contact and the kind of collision area, which we were a lot better on the weekend. But we're under no illusions that we're going to have to go up another level than we were on the weekend because it's different playing in Canberra. You know how hard it is in Canberra. We're probably not going to get the same conditions that we did at the Force, where they've been nice and warm. Probably going to be a little bit more dewy, and probably the kind of stuff that we were able to do with our kick plan on the weekend will be sit really perfectly moving into the Brumbies and a little bit more dewy evening in Canberra.
How do you go about beating the Brumbies, Chip? From your point of view, what's the...
It's got to be up front. You've got to disrupt their set piece on their ball so they just can't play on their terms. And then I think the more you can sort of disrupt that breakdown and take Nick White's threat out of the game will be massive. So I'm assuming there might be a bit of artillery coming back for the big fellas this weekend, as in the Crusaders. It'll be good for guys like Cody Taylor to come back for this sort of fixture. Sam Whitelock had a good shift. Cullen Grace I thought filled in well at lock, but whatever that makeup of that 8 is, it is going to be crucial in terms of the success, because the Brumbies type 5 is quite, they're almost humble, like the unsung heroes, but on the back of that, their loosies, thrive, and so do their insides. And another player, I think, Brent, I'm sure you've identified it as Ikitau. I think he's in some great touch. Some of his ball players' ability to put the ball in behind, but also the way he's carrying at the moment. He is destructive in that midfield, so he'll be one to shut down as well.
They've got some options there in the midfield.
Yeah, they do. And like, I think I've talked around their kind of structures off the line-out mauls especially. I feel like they're probably the best team in the competition, being able to strike off that line-out maul. So look, we've done a bit of preview. It's probably at the start of our week, and it is a short week for us. But our coaches have been really good around the messages and kind of the cues that we've been needing to see. Because look, they've kind of got that balance. They're not just a forward-orientated team. They have the ability to be able to play off that ball, whether it be with Lolasier going to the line, the outside backs, and Ikitau, and their kind of midfield pairing. So they've got a lot there. And, look, we're really looking forward to a challenge in Canberra, because we know there's a lot of history as well between the two clubs. When it first started around the finals that we've had. So it's always a great encounter, and it's going to be an awesome occasion come Canberra, when we get to Canberra.
It does bring back some memories. Ron Cribb Grubbers, an unfortunate night for Ben Blair. There's been some really interesting stuff happened there between those two teams.
George Smith, Larkham.
Yeah, and generally there's a lot on the line because they're so consistently good, both of the sides.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectation with the history they have, so it's always one you sort of circle to watch. And I think, no doubt Jace Ryan took note of a bit of a tight head, and that led to 7 points at scrum time as well. So I think he'll be frothing surely, Brynner, to get those boys up front. Maybe marching a penalty of their own, or putting it back onto the Brumbies.
Yeah, I think it will be a big challenge for us, and I think you look at kind of the Waratahs and the review that we had, and the kind of accountability from 1 to 23, and even the whole squad and management. We wanted our intent and our contact area a lot better, and so I think we were able to do that in spades on the weekend. And our kicking game was a lot better with our game management around really sucking the force out and really applying a lot of pressure into them. So it fits in really nicely with the Brumbies this week. We know that it's going to be tough around that collision area, and I know our forwards are really going to look forward to that challenge, because you probably have to think, that forward pack, along with the Blues, probably the top two forward packs in the competition at the moment.
I think the kicking game you mentioned a couple of times, but that is going to be critical. The Brumbies kicked 31 times to the Chiefs 20s, and when you listen to Sam Cane after the game, he made a point that they played too much in their 22, and those forced errors led to actual points. So I'm assuming it won't just be contestable. Long and out would be a good ploy for you guys this week as well.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it was a great for us on the weekend. We got our kicking game right. Anytime you can bring Richie back into the fold, and he can have his kind of experience and what he brings for our team. He was massive for us, and so he did a lot of great kind of kicks around that 22 metre zone that you're talking about, Jip, that Sam Cane alluded to on the weekend, and we actually got some really good pay out of that. But I think at the same time, it's everybody being able to be, when you're called upon through your kicking, whether it be contestables, seeing the space on the edge, whether it be Davey, whoever's on the midfield or whoever's on the wings, being able to go in different areas of the field, because the Brumbies will be previewing us and seeing what was good for us against the Force. But then again, it's been able to just stay one step in forward of the other, and kind of adapting on the run of what's presented in front of us.
Yep.
Now, you guys obviously got a big win. We saw the Hurricanes get a big win, as you mentioned before. We saw the Blues get a big win. Last week, the chat was, this competition is close. Anything could happen. Of course, Murphy came along and said, nah, there's going to be some blowouts this week. What do we take out of that? Has the narrative changed? Is the gap bigger, Jip?
No, I don't think it is. I just think, the acid was put on teams that probably weren't used to losing, and you could see maybe the intensity of their week was there. But even though apart from probably the Rebels game, it took a while for you to put them away, didn't it, Bryn? They were there or thereabouts, around that 50-minute mark, and then a bit of brilliance with chip and chases and Will Jordan magic. They got away on them. So I don't think it's saying the gap's too big. But it shows that you need to be on. Bryn sort of spoke about it their Waratahs week, just being off 2 or 3% costs you. And that's what I think it is the prep and the lead up to the week, and who's best at dealing with that perceived pressure of, I suppose, fans wanting that performance.
Yeah. Look, when we look at the Blues performance, it's hard for us not to talk about Akira Ioane. Goodness me. 2 or 3 weeks into his return, and he looks like an All Black number 6 to me.
Absolutely, and I think with the injury to Shannon Frizzell, he can play a big part. He's really fit. He'll get more and more minutes under his belt, but the thing I like about him most is his collision areas. Like, he's in the thick of it. He's moving bodies, whether it's through cleanouts or dragging bodies with him through his leg drive, and having the ability to play on the edge. Feel like he's really found his mojo and his balance to his game, and he's got confidence in that, and just goes out there and be's a kidder. He doesn't try to be something he's not, and I think that's when you see the best in him.
The hard part, Bryn.
I think. Sorry.
Carry on.
Yeah. Sorry, just on that. Look, I think Akira's been coming back into a rich trainer form, considering the break that he's had. But a guy that probably, we've talked about him, is Hoskins Tutu, and what he's really bringing to that team as well. His distribution skills, I think if you've seen off their scrum line-out, their line-out mauls, his ability to be able as a ball player just through his skill set, and the amount of times that you're seeing him putting people away through his bridge passes with his passing game is really great to see. So, look, I think that trio as well, you got Doltz there that we've talked about as well, but I think, that's your loose forward trio that I think at the moment is playing collectively really well, and it's a really formidable forward pack at the moment. And
on Hoss, if those grubbers had stayed in, potentially he would have set himself up for a try like Valentini did. So he's got that vision. He's an amazing talent. The skill set he has.
So, but what do you do? when you look at that and you've got Ardie Savea to throw into the mix, Sam Cane to throw into the mix, the question about, and someone mentioned this to me on the weekend, having that specialist ball carrying number 6 that we're so used to, how important is that in the way of looking? Maybe if you look at the overall talent there, you could probably head in a different direction where you've got players who can do a little bit of everything, but do you want that guy who's going to play 6, play hard, carry, tackle hard?
I think so. I think there definitely seems to be a more focus on being specialists. We want guys that can cover multiple positions, but 95% of their focus has to be on the one job and do that really well. And if you can cover late in the game or you're needed, then absolutely. But I think you'll see probably from the All Black selectors' mindset straight away is that they're looking to put specialists out there because the expectation of what they're going to need to demand from them in terms of getting these performances against a pretty impressive Irish side first up, they'll need everyone humming and just probably decluttered, focus on the one role, and it just gives that simplicity in terms of that prep for players.
So, Bryn, then you've got, obviously Sam Cane's the captain. It's going to be hard to walk past him because he is the captain. Ardie Savea is arguably the best player in the country, so you can't miss out on him. It is a difficult selection for where you go at 6.
Oh, it is, mate. And I think there's just so much talent at the moment that's playing consistently well. Like we've talked around Shannon Frizzell and his ability at the Highlanders before he was injured. You've got Ethan Blackadder, who's playing 6, 7, 8 at the moment and can cover that. And then Aketa's come back and had some really good performances coming back from his long-term injury. So it's really hard to know where you can go. And unfortunately, someone's going to miss out just due to the fact of how much talent there is and the kind of high level that the loose forward shares are playing in the country at the moment.
I don't think we can leave out Luke Jacobson. I think he's made a good fist of 6. I know you're going to love this, but he's such a strong ball carrier. He's a great defender. He's another one to put in the mix as well. And he's you mentioned Sam Cane, Luke Jacobson and Peter Gus. When they're humming, the Chiefs are humming. And I think you saw that one opportunity that Peter Gus got on the weekend, and that's just a big body too easy. Jacobson's been making similar carries. There had been chat around Peter Gus. Does he need to find a spark and form again to bring himself into that selection mindset? Because he's a big man, and that does give you a point of difference. Like there's big guys, but he's a big unit and has the ability to flatten people, ball in hand and ball not in hand.
Yeah, and so then it's really a conversation about what happens on the bench too, because I feel for a guy like Dalton, because on form, probably a starting All Black, but the setup is slightly different to that, isn't it, Bryn? Like when you've got your captain, he's your captain. That's it.
Yeah, it is. But I think for Dalton and anybody in those kind of positions that are, kind of you want to be playing, is that you can only control what you can control. So yes, obviously he's the captain, but it's based around performances. You're rewarded around your performance of how you're going to play. And look, let's be honest, being a captain, you probably get a little bit more rope. But with the way Dalton's playing, all you're going to do is put pressure on selectors and coaching staff, because look, when he's gone out there at test level now through last year, the amount of test matches that he played, if there are injuries around that, it's a like for like. And to be honest, you just stake your claim even more moving forward that I want to be deserving of the number 7 or whatever loose forward trio position that wants to start moving forward.
Dalton just loves playing. He'll play anywhere. He honestly does. He loves getting out there in the thick of it. So even if it is a bench role, he can play 6, 7, 8, I believe, comfortably.
Yeah. The other one from the weekend is interesting. Quinn Tupaia was once again good in a losing effort. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is again looking incredibly dangerous, and again more wonderful touches. What's the pecking order there? Well,
you'd have to think Quinn's probably the incumbent, and I thought he was fantastic. And I spoke about Ikitau and his meters post contact and getting through the other side of defence. Well, Quinn was exactly the same, and he just seems to be getting better and better, but more confident in his own ability, and that will transpire. So you'd have to give him the inside running, but Roger's going great as well. And what Roger's doing is, I know he wasn't involved in that try of Rico coming short and going through, but Stevie had to go out the back or short. The work of Caleb Clark out the back, the more that I feel like Caleb or Mark Talea can hover around that 12-13 axis and sort of, it was sort of like your guys' try against the Highlanders, Bryn, where Havili's promoted, Leicester comes on that short ball towards Nuggy, and there was a ball option out the back. I think if those three, a blindside winger and those two midfield combinations, that's hard to D. You're going to have to make a decision. You know, are they going to run? Are they going to hot step? Is Rico going to come on that short ball? Or are we going out the back to Caleb? Like, the more that, rather than hovering around that 10, I think that blindside winger could get out to similar to other sides. And man, like, even if you make the wrong call, they're still going to get gain line. Like, it doesn't matter what happens. So I'm excited where that sort of three-man pairing can go to, and the more confidence, say, Roger can get with Bodie and Rico, it gives them an opportunity to have that cohesive nature and the confidence of the selectors to potentially give them an opportunity against Ireland.
Are you in a similar mindset, Bryn?
I think with Rog, I think, you know, unfortunately he had those injuries, and I think the biggest thing for him is that he's going to be able to accumulate more time, you know, being able to play these Trans-Tasman games and being able to, I guess, find his feet for what it is to be a 12. I think the biggest thing for Rog is going to be in the later part of the competition for when the Blues are in those kind of final stages. And playing against high intensity, the kind of scenarios that you're going to need against an Ireland or kind of in a World Cup where it's going to be, you know, a hot contestant, you're going to make decisions under pressure against a high level team. And so I think for Rog in those kind of moments, that's where I'm seeing it. I think, you know, he's going to find his balance and being able to get those kind of minutes and kind of understanding of what it is to be a 12. But then when push comes to shove in the finals game, and if he gets the opportunity to start, that's where we'll see how he performs in that kind of role. And then you've also got, like you said, Quinta Pai, you've got David Havili, who was in the All Blacks last year, who can cover a lot of positions as long as a 12. You've got Braden Nenor, Jack Goodhue's back with us as well. And then you've also got Alex Nankivell, who's again continuing to keep putting his hand up for being a 12 or a 13 in the squad. So it's going to be interesting to see how many they do select. Are they going to select 5 or they keep it to 4? You've also got Geordie Barrett, who they think might be possibly as a 12 as well, who plays 15. So there's a lot of ways you can go. And I guess for the midfielders, it's more so keep putting your hand up, keep putting in good shifts, and, you know, making a case for you to be in that kind of 4 or 5 man midfielder selection at the back end of the year. Sorry, the back end for the Rugby Championship in Ireland.
This is a little bit out there, and I'm not saying that potentially he'll get picked for the All Blacks, but a guy that hasn't had always front foot ball, Thomas Umaga Jensen, like, even on the weekend, he's seriously talented, man. Like, he's got a bright future if he can just, you know, keep at it. Like, in terms of a team not going that well and performing the way he is, imagine when he can get on that sort of front foot ball, it'll be outstanding.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have to let Brynner go soon. I've quite enjoyed not just what you've been saying, Bryn, but also the shopping habits of the people in behind you. There's been one lady in particular who really wants a flowery dress, but she's just not committing to it. She's come back twice and headed off on her way.
Yeah, she has. I've been watching a lot of people just in behind, just must be
just staring.
A bit of terminal, so we're just coming in and out, just coming in and out. What's this idiot doing? But, I've got 5 minutes. I've got 5 minutes, Ross. So you're all right.
Excellent. Oh, perfect. Before we let you go, get a couple more absolute ditties from you. Your old teammate, Owen Franks. Did you watch much of him? What did you make of him back? And talking about how he wants to be an All Black.
Oh, look, Ross, it doesn't surprise me with Owie and his mindset. Look, you know, I was fortunate enough to be able to play a lot of rugby with him when he was at the Crusaders, and if you're talking around 1%ers and being a professional rugby player, get around Owen Franks and what it looks like to be a professional rugby player, and even come back from an Achilles early. He's come back early, and honestly, just not surprised with how he is as a rugby player and how professional he is. But to tell you the truth, Ross, it was pretty tough seeing him in a yellow strip, to be honest. He's a centurion of ours and very similar to Luke Romano around, you know, applying his trade somewhere else. But, you know, look at opportunities come from him, and, you know, I thought, you know, would not be surprised, you know, if he ends up being an All Black again, because we know how strong he is at set piece. But there's nothing that would put it past me for Owie with his mindset. And so it's good to see him back on the field, bar it being a yellow jersey.
In terms of the Canes run, he could become a really key figure in terms of providing the platform. We know how good the backs are, we know how good the loosies are, but if they can provide that platform for those guys to fire off, he could be a key cog in that. Lomax is going well, but having the ability to balance between his experience, and he is a little bit point of difference in terms of props in this part of the world. There's a lot of that sort of ball carrying skill set mindset, but you know, he's just going to give you the simple stuff done really, really well.
And when push came to shove in 2019, they made their decision based on ball carrying. They kind of said, we know what Owie can do, but what we want is ball carriers to get over the advantage line. In the World Cup, it didn't actually turn out that way. They didn't really get that in the key games, and it didn't work out. So will they still be in that mindset, maybe, Bryn? Do you think they're still going to be in the ball carrying prop mindset, or would they be like, okay, well, we know what Owen can do, and he's going to anchor it?
Oh, look, I think it's always great to have that kind of experience in the back. And look, not too sure around how his time has been and his skill set. It could have improved. So I think that'll be a continuation of what his growth will be, hopefully moving forward. But look, I think to be able to contest against these Northern Hemisphere teams, you're looking at the likes of Ireland, who probably at the moment have probably one of the better propping duos in the country, in the world, with more so around their skill set, how explosive they are, can ball play at the line, which is going to be really important, especially against these line speed pressure teams, and being able to, under pressure, hit the tip ball, go out the back, and being able to put it on the front hands of where you need it as you pivot. So there's a lot of props running around at the moment that are doing that. You've got a lot of young guys that are coming through. You've got big Tamaiti Williams, who I think has got a big future in our club and in world rugby, just with his attributes and what he can bring. You've got Ollie Norris, who I think has been playing really well for the Chiefs. And then you've also got young guys, Fitch and Newell, who's been playing really well for us. So I feel that the next generation moving forward, there's a lot of guys that are going to be in that kind of mould where I'm seeing the likes of Ireland and the French have been able to play ball at the line. But I think as well, you've still got to be able to win your set piece ball. You know how important it is in World Cups, even in Ireland and big teams that involve a lot of contact. You've got to win your set piece come in scrum time. And we've got Nepal Alala, Joe Moody is unfortunately injured, but you've got your tried and true that are able to still do that as well.
Fantastic teammate, Bryn. A couple of times today you've managed to just slip in about 19 Crusaders with a sporadic other team member here or there. So, mate, you are a world-class teammate.
Yeah, I'm getting paid, Baz. I'm getting paid in the back pocket. So Fletcher Newell's been in my mind. He's been in my ear the whole time. So but there's a lot of good talent floating around in our ranks at the moment.
Yeah, we'll look forward to having a dream team later on with no Crusaders, because Bryn's not sticking around for the dream team.
Yeah. It looks like you're going in, mate. It looks like the boys are going to the gate.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, Braden Ennell was flying in the background there on the way through to the gate. So thank you again, Bryn. If you see the lady who wanted to buy that flowery dress, tell her to just go do it.
Tell her it was a good decision to move on.
I'll be sure to give her your 10 cents worth, Ross, and jip her that she's much needed on this podcast. So I'll let her know.
You only live once.
See you, mate. Go well this weekend.
All right, lads.
Cheers,
see you,
mate.
boys.
I quite enjoy these airport episodes.
Yeah, it brings a new flavour to the pod.
Yeah, totally. And the Crusaders on tour's given us an appearance from Scott Robertson, some good shopping in the background.
100%.
We've pretty much had it all. Hey, moving on from Owen Franks, let's have a quick chat about Moana Pasifika and I suppose where they ended up after that game against the Waratahs. It was a good chance for them to get a win at home against the Waratahs team that's looked relatively impressive. What are you making of their progression so far this year?
Oh, look, I think they've performed admirably, but they have put themselves in a position to win games and haven't quite got there. So I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with that, but they are embedding new systems, new structures, and a big focus, I know, for them is getting things started and really connecting with their culture and their people and utilising that. And rugby sometimes may be secondary, so I think that actually brings the best out of them because they're playing with a real purpose and for something that's bigger than themselves. So they put it all out there. They started extremely well. Unfortunate not to get the win, but I suppose it showed that, how good this Tars side is. They didn't play that well, but they found a way to win, and I think that's always a good judge. Is winning ugly is crucial if you want to go all the way. So I think Moana Pasifika will look back and think they might have been able to push for that 8th spot. I'm not saying it's out of the question now, but they've made it a little bit harder for themselves. They're going to have to win all 3. I think they might have 4 actually because they've got a forced make-up game.
Yep.
So that could become actually crucial for that 8th spot if they can get on a bit of a run and be a little bit more clinical, get the impact off the bench they need to close these games out.
Against the Waratahs team, it wasn't going to be easy. They've jumped the Reds on the table, and they're looking like the second best Aussie team, which you probably wouldn't have thought necessarily at the start of the season.
No, but I think the Reds have been hit hard with injuries, man. Like they've got a lot of young talent out there at the moment, and just in crucial moments in the game, that lack of experience or composure or calmness isn't quite there. So, I've said it 2 weeks in a row and I'll say it again. I don't know how bad James O'Connor's injury is, but they need him back. He just had such a handle on the control and putting that team in the right areas of the field, knowing when to pull the trigger, knowing when to relieve pressure. He becomes a key factor, so I don't think you can write them off, but it's not as convincing, say, as the Tars aren't reliant on so much on one player. Maybe Michael Hooper coming back did inject some life into the squad, and he's quite key. But outside of that, they're probably, had a few injuries and using their depth as well.
My favourite Tarzan this week, Nemani Ndolo, possibly coming back. He's well into his mid-30s now, isn't he, Nemani? But still a wrecking ball of a man, but coming back to the Waratahs possibly.
Yeah, well, I certainly know that the highlight of poor old Matt Duffy will come back out if he does re-enter. But we were talking before we started the podcast about, who would you rather tackle, Caleb Clarke or Leicester Fainga'anuku? Well, tell you what, you add Ndolo in there, and it's three pretty tough choices, to be fair.
Totally. Wow. I think Matt Duffy's still in orbit. From that particular moment.
When it gets rolled out every year, he always re-grams it and says, "Thanks, guys. Cheers for the reminder."
It was really good. But let's talk a little bit about that left wing spot then, shall we? Because you're right. Sometimes it just comes down to who would you least want to tackle? And right now, I wouldn't want to tackle Caleb Clarke or Leicester Fainga'anuku. So which way do you go?
I think it's a tough one because they're both, as Bryn said, they're both controlling what's in their hands, and that's playing well. But when you see Caleb in open space and the way he can just, I suppose, swat off defenders, it's not that Leicester can't do that. It's just, I don't know, he seems slippery, he seems, the fastest he's ever been. He changes direction. That run off the kickoff, I mean, it was glorious to watch. But it is hard, and I think it does. It's more around, are they going to take one power left winger into the squad, or can they fit two with the ability to cover centre? So Leicester does have that ability, but I still think there might be a bit of a switch in focus to more specialist mindset in terms of selection.
I suppose it depends, what you do with your midfield, because if you are going to go for less of a power midfield and you want to have a guy like one of those two blokes, you can have him chining into the back line, getting over the advantage line. They do offer some options elsewhere.
Yeah,
on board.
I think 100%. That's what I was trying to allude to. Not only Mark Clare, but more so Caleb hovering in behind the midfield pairing of Roger and Rico is only going to create opportunities for those two players, but for himself, because if they don't pick the right one and he gets through a hole, or he's even given a weak shoulder, he's guaranteed to go through almost.
And I hear all these names and I get excited about what we're seeing from all of these players, and then I read that article which is quoting Tom Taylor, the former Crusaders, All Blacks first five / fullback, and he reckoned that New Zealand rugby is going backwards. Now I think the results from the All Blacks in the last couple of years haven't been amazing, but look, when you see the talent that's coming through, I don't believe that it's necessarily going backwards in that way. There's always someone.
Yeah, look, I don't. I certainly don't. And sometimes when when I watch Premiership rugby or Top 14, it's a different style of game. And you can look at it and you can sometimes look at our game and you go, we do this, that, and think that it may be superior. It's probably not. But it's what you're used to, and Tom's been playing around the world and having some fantastic experiences, and on the back of a less than convincing year by the All Blacks, he's sensing that coming from the Super Rugby and the separation away from the different style of playing the South African teams. So I can see how he comes to that conclusion, just in terms of the way he's experiencing the rugby world at the moment, and then some of the results towards the end of the last year. But if anything, Bryn's just spoken about the young talent coming through. I feel like we're in a position of strength for the next tier of players to grow under this current crop that have got good experience, but to give us strength into the future as well.
For me, it feels like a tactical evolution is the thing that needs to be made here. It's not necessarily the players, it's what we're doing with our players, where we've fallen maybe a little bit behind some of the other teams and struggled with what they're bringing at us.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see the article, so I haven't put too much thought into it. But I think we like to be the trendsetters, and at the moment, perception is we're not, setting the trends. We're trying to play catch up a little bit. But I think when we do, or we find the key, to evolving the game for the next sort of 4-year period or whatever, I think we'll be at the pinnacle of either leading it or not being far behind.
And he reckons that not being able to play South Africa in Super Rugby is a key part of that. Now, I'm not sure the South African teams have been very strong in Super Rugby for a while.
No, I think what he means is it's just a different style. So you learn how to adapt your skill set to, I suppose that Northern Hemisphere style of footy, which is, pretty, if you use Ireland and French test, it's direct, dominating the collision, getting in behind, and then having great running halves that have the ability to put themselves away or others. But yeah, I wouldn't read too much. I certainly don't read too much into it, but as I say, you can sort of see how Tom, in the position he is, has come to that conclusion.
From completely left field, which is where we like Michael Cheika to come from, he's saying that Argentina can win next year's World Cup. Have you seen anything that is hinted that is a possibility?
I think it is. Like, the only reason I say this is history. Like, they seem to peak bang on World Cup year, and they're always in the semis or quarters, or they put themselves in a position to go all the way. And Michael Cheika has had form of taking a Wallabies team to a World Cup, so he knows what's needed to get to the final. Whether they have the ability to win on the day, I think it's one side you wouldn't want to bet against, sort of like the French. You don't quite know what you're going to get all the time. So when we had Pablo Matera on, the emotion and what it means to that playing group is there, and that is sometimes all you need. 7 tests on the bounce, doing something for their people, making it a bigger sport back home. All the things that he's motivated by to bring back to his country could play a part, and with the technical ability of Czech, I don't think it's too outlandish to think that based on the way they perform at World Cups. That's all I'm going on. I wouldn't, if I was just going on results over the last year, no, you wouldn't think they'd maybe make a quarterfinal, maybe not. But they do have the ability to peak and catch teams off guard at World Cup time.
Yeah, without the Juarez, I suppose there's two aspects to it. There's the time together aspect, and then there's actually, they could be a lot fresher because they got run into the ground, that team, when they play for the Juarez.
Yes and no, though, because there's a lot of footy for the guys that are playing, up in the top league, or not top league, sorry, top 14 or Premiership. But if they're in Japan, they'll be certainly rested.
Yeah. Now, look, we've been doing this Rethinking Rugby segment for a little while now, 3 or 4 weeks, and each week we ask one of you out there to put something on our social media chat. Tell us what you think could change within rugby. Areas, whether it's laws or the approach to marketing or whatever it might be, and let's have a discussion about it. This week's Rethinking Rugby is all about the red cards. Now, we've had some red cards this season. We've had a lot of red cards, a lot of yellow cards this season. The suggestion this week is that players should be ejected like an American sport, and you can simply replace them unless it is completely malicious. I know that you're a fan of replacing after 20 minutes from the red card. Is it worthwhile doing only malicious incidents for red cards, or are we delivering the wrong message to safety points of view, technique points of view?
Yeah, potentially, especially around the head, because not a lot of the red cards have been malicious. They've been, poor technique. So I think we have to make a concerted effort and the problem that is concussion in our sport, and to make it into a position where, everyone is safe, but, the next generation of player wants to play. Is pretty critical to the survival of our game. So I can see where they're going, though. I don't mind the idea of, like, if you see 3 breakdown infringements by one player, then they're ejected, and it does bring a different element around the word discipline in teams. But in saying that, sometimes you do need to push the boundaries to find out where they are, but also to make the game what it is. So it's probably a no from me.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've had many yeses so far. You could foul out, you could do it.
Bryn's the new age, mate. He probably would jump at it. He loves the basketball.
Yeah. I quite like the idea. Yeah. Personally, I like the idea of the.
Well, how many then? And would it be the same infringement or just penalties?
Look, I think just if you see the need to red card someone, give them an ejection unless it was malicious, and you're off, and as many as you need in a game. So if that uses your entire bench up, then so be it. There has to be some sort of punishment, right?
So yeah, but I mean, how many infringements until they're ejected?
Well, I think that he was referring to it doesn't necessarily matter on how many, but look, if 2 yellow cards equal a red, then yeah, sure, like 2.
2 penalties and you're gone.
Well, two penalties that are worthy of a yellow card.
I see what you mean.
In the current ethos of what a yellow card is.
So it still has to be quite a high level. I was thinking it's just like infringements, just penalties. Say if I'm a player that gets 4 or 5 penalties or 3 penalties, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And then there's still the yellow card and red card system.
Yeah, I quite like fouling out like basketball.
Yeah.
Certainly if you're on your own line and you're willing to give up penalties on your own line and rucks, getting offside, all those kind of things, and it adds up, then maybe you can also have those team foul situations. You know, like what are we going to go to next? Going to go to the line.
Well, we're just going to play basketball soon.
Between basketball and the 40-20 from rugby league, the game is just going to go in a completely different direction. I'm not against the ejections. I'm just saying.
I'm not against it either, but I'd need to know a little bit more detail.
Yeah. put more into the comments section and we can elaborate this.
So they'll just say that guy just needs to pipe down.
We'll see where we go from there. Let's move on to the Super Rugby Dream Team. Obviously, we've had a big weekend. Bryn would have had 15 Crusaders in that starting 100%. outfit. Look, each week we go into the Super Rugby Dream Team on RugbyPass.com. You click on there, you put your team in, whoever's closest can get a subscription to RugbyPass. This week it's Jasper Miller who's gone in there. If you are the closest over the entire season, you know the deal. You get a chance to come on here right at the end. But let's have a look at your dream team for the week. I know you forgot your book.
Yeah, I know.
But at the same time, those stats have still been coming out.
Yeah, they're still there.
It's
just like the book's a safety blanket, you know, just in case something slips, but most of it's there.
So do you have the full team in your head?
I do, I think.
Okay, let's go.
Well, I actually struggled this week. There was so many players that did well, especially, if we use 15, for example. Morby was outstanding. Zion Sullivan was the same. But Will Jordan just has a knack, doesn't he? Man, he is good. Like his ability to find a try, save a try, he is definitely world class at 15 at the moment. 14, I've gone Mark Talia purely for the put down. Like, how can you leave that out? That was outstanding. 11, Caleb Clark. We've obviously had the discussion, like Leicester was fantastic as well. But I don't know, there was something special about probably seeing Caleb live and what he did, how destructive he was. His stats back it up. 13, I think, when close to player of the round was Reeks. 12, I went Quinn Tupaia. 10, I actually, Aidan Morgan was great. Richie was outstanding, but I went Stevie because 1, he was nailing his kicks, and 2, in terms of that game, putting him on the map as a genuine first receiver was massive, and I think if he can back up that sort of performance against one of the bigger sides, then it'll be a serious leg up for him to try and make the All Blacks. Nick White at 9. 8 was challenging. You had Hoskins, who actually played well at 8. You can probably see where I'm going here. I thought Peter Gus was great. Thought Pete Samu was outstanding as well. He was looking back to his very best. But I'll put Akira there because I can't move Rob Valentini out of 6 because he's just playing too well. So I put Akira at 8. 7, I went with Dalton. James Tucker, one of the lots. I went Cullen Grace. I thought, for a positional change, maybe a bit of a disrupted week, 2 new young hookers. He did well in that locking position. He was good around the field. 3, Ofa Tuangawhasi, one of his best games I think we've seen. Kurt Eklund the same. I thought he was great. And I went James Slipper at 1.
Oh, there's a few blues in there.
There's just a couple.
Bryn would be on you.
But but to be fair, how could I not after that performance? It was challenging.
Yeah, 100%. What about Cullen Grace though? Like, there are a lot of loose forwards around, and probably a few number 8s, especially in front of him. Locking could be an option. He's a tall enough body. Oh,
and he's a great line-out option. It could be. He may need to get a bit bigger, believe it or not, as silly as that sounds. Like the old engine room, when you think of guys like Retallick, Romano, Whitelock, they're probably a little bit thicker set than the Lucy's. But yeah, it's definitely, he didn't look out of place.
Yeah, and we saw a few. Tom Robinson played lock as well. We saw a few of those guys who've got that ability to jump around, and right now, you would say that the locking space is slightly, there's still competition,
Josh Lord,
but
Tupou
probably
Vaa'i.
not at the next level the way that the loose forward stuff is, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's once Paddy's back, you got Scott Barrett, you got Brody and Sam, and you got Josh Lord, Tupou Vaa'i. Even like I know he hasn't played much this year, but a guy like Scott Scrafton, Josh Goodhue, there's definitely plenty going around.
Yeah, I suppose the key thing for the All Blacks is having those guys there who are absolutely world class in those positions, because there is depth. It's just world class depth.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, we've
question
been
mark.
spoiled
Yeah.
for a long time in the locking position, haven't we?
Yeah. Brody's not far away, is he? So,
No, hopefully not.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. This weekend, plenty of good footy to come. Let's go through these games and the results of what they could be. Highlanders versus Force on Friday.
I'm going to go the Highlanders. I just think that might be the juice they needed to be able to go home and get one. They love playing underneath that roof. Potentially, Aaron maybe rested or given less minutes. So, I think everyone knows Folau Whakatawa off the bench at Super Rugby level is exceptional. I think, his next opportunity to start, and if he can take the bull by the horns and direct that team around and get a result, I think he puts himself in with a real chance if he's eligible for selection.
Actually, I saw an article on RugbyPass this week also talking about Cortez Ratima.
Yeah. Well, Bryn, like I didn't know too much about him, but when Bryn gave him the big raps, I've been watching him quite closely, and he's seriously good. Yeah. Big future.
Well, and because there are some halfbacks at that Chiefs team.
Yeah, 100%. It's Xavier Rowe was the next new thing, only last year. So now Cortez Ratima, so it's a bit of a ruthless merry-go-round at the Chiefs at the moment, because Brad Webb is world class, as we know. Yeah,
these are some options there. Brumbies versus the Crusaders, of course, is the big game of the weekend. Where do you see that one going?
It's tough. It's tough without knowing the teams. I'd love to know, what artillery's coming back for the Crusaders. I think the slip up against the Waratahs, and believe it or not, the fact that the Crusaders are on the road in an Aussie, and obviously the Brumbies have to travel back, could potentially give them a leg up. So I think it'll be one in that forward battle, and I just don't see the Crusaders having a slip up twice on this tour. So I'll back them, but it'll definitely be 1-12.
It's a bit rough calling it a slip up against the Brumbies, though, isn't it? Because they're a good team.
Oh, they are. You know what I mean, though. Yeah. For that Crusaders standard, it's not so much about the Brumbies. It's just I just can imagine their prep and their focus for this week would just be test match level.
Well, it would be great to see, because that will set up the rest of the competition very nicely, to see what happens between those two teams for what looks like a competition for second place at the moment on the table, going into the playoffs. The Blues obviously look $1 million from the weekend, so you'd be rough to bet against them. The Drua versus Moana Pasifika. This is a massive game.
Huge. I don't know where to go with this one, because the Drua just catch me off guard. They have these performances and you're like, Struth, they're on here. And then they'll just have ones like they did on the weekend. So I don't know. I'm going to back Moana to get it done. Yeah. I'm very 50-50. As you can see, I'm still struggling to make a call now. But I think Moana Pasifika will get the job done. I
think people might laugh when I say that 11 v 12, both teams with just one win, is a massive game. But this game is something completely different culturally. Yeah. And that puts so much on it. Yeah, and I think there'll be a lot of both sides will draw on that and want to showcase the power of the Pacific and what makes us, what is our point of difference, is our connection with that culture. And I think it's furthermore, this is interesting because I know people have a problem with the 8 teams, but it makes games interesting the whole way through the competition, because they're still a genuine chance. And if they can get on a run, either of these teams, they can slip into that 8. It's certainly, I think that's probably the most interesting part of the table at the moment, is who can get into that 8th spot. Yeah. The Highlanders appear to be finding their way, and it'd be hard to get above them. But it's only if they don't get
done against the Force, it's right open.
Yeah, 100%. Blues v Reds.
I think the Blues at home. The key will be they lost against the Force and they were smarting, they were filthy. They weren't happy with the draw performance, they weren't happy with the Force, and it was almost like those 2 tries, that's what I was trying to say, like kick them into gear, like what are we doing? Like let's be the Blues, and they just executed and did it magnificently through the simple actions of running hard, cleaning hard first, going through the middle, getting the offload game going because they've earned the right to offload, to then spreading it wide. And I think that's the theory they need to go with again against the Reds. And if the Reds don't have O'Connor, I just don't see them being able to be in this race.
Yeah, and by quite a long way, possibly.
Potentially. Not as, man, it would be pretty hard to back up 71 points, but if they do it, I tell you what, I'll be waxing lyrical about it.
Well, and it would say something about the team, wouldn't it?
Certainly would.
To go back to back in that kind of way. Even if it's only 20 points, it's still only 20 points. It's still a good win.
It's convincing.
Waratahs versus the Hurricanes.
I'm going the Canes. I just think they're on a run. I do. I just feel that, I don't know, something about watching them the other night, I just feel like, they've utilised their depth, they've given guys opportunity, there's challenge for selection. I just think that they're a team that seems to be finding all the right pieces at the right time of the year.
And they're in a position right now where they're only a few wins behind some of the other teams that are above them. So some big gains can be made in a very short period of time.
Huge. And this is the key test for them. I think they've maybe got the Rebels and someone else afterwards, Rebels and Force maybe. But this will be the big test that can give them the springboard into those last 2 rounds, hopefully, push to that home quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when the Hurricanes went all the way to the title that first time, and they went to South Africa and they had some issues, and then they pulled out a big game. Yeah. And then off the back of that, the momentum just rolled, and they're one of those teams that when it starts clicking, I mean, they don't have Bowden Barrett now, but you know what I mean.
I think that performance for Aidan Morgan would have given them a lot of confidence to maybe give him another crack for a big game. So the pieces are there.
Yeah.
And I think, I think a guy like Owen Franks can be a key cog in the simplicity he brings to his game will be infectious, and that's, when you're in tight battles, it is just doing the simple things well. It's such a cliche, but it's so true.
I feel like this weekend is a massive weekend for the Chiefs. Going to the Rebels and winning over there is going to be something that really has a big difference between them having a chance at a home playoff game or playing the worst of the 2 teams in the semi-final, if that's as far as they go.
I think it is. I think it's a big week for the Canes and the Chiefs. It's almost probably getting to that point. If the Chiefs can do the job right and get a good points differential, they may lock up 4th spot. But if they don't, and the Hurricanes have a good result, I think it's all on for both. And don't think the Rebels are going to take. I was speaking to James Hansen after the game. He played his 50th game for the Rebels, and they weren't happy. They'll want to bounce back. So don't expect it just to be a 71 drumming.
They looked gutted, and as you would, because they put in a lot of effort to get going.
Yeah, and I think it was just one of those nights. The Blues as a side, man, when they click, you don't want to be the team that they play. And the offload game, the collision area, their kicking game. Their decisions, some of the passing decisions to get on the outside to create the opportunities, the selfless nature, it was just all there to see. And unfortunately, the Rebels just didn't have an answer. No,
and they fell off one-on-one tackles, which they would think is quite an easy fix to solve a lot of those points.
100%. And they had sort of just been going on a peak. Like Matt Phillips' stats, he's one of the leading, offload players. He's 3rd or 4th in carries. He's their skipper with Michael Wells out. And he had a quiet game, and it just shows if your big guns don't fire, it puts you on the back foot from the word go.
So that's another big weekend of Super Rugby, because we're getting to that point of the year. There's only a few rounds left, and each game is so relevant with your top 8.
Yeah.
And that is what makes it super cool. We've had some good results recently, close ones, big blowouts. It's exciting. Who knows what's going to happen this weekend?
I know, and you couldn't have said that, past years. It literally is tough to make these calls, which is great. That's what you want. That's what the competition needs.
And not necessarily running away with it at the top either. the Blues, the Brumbies, the Crusaders on any moment. Anything.
Well,
could
they've
be
shown if you're off,
Yeah.
you'll get stung.
This competition could go any way at all. Hopefully the Chiefs get back into that reckoning as well.
Yeah, and your mate Luke Jacobson has another barnstormer.
Barnstormer and takes that All Black 6 jersey.
Yeah.
Go on, Luke. You can do it. You can do it. Thank you again, James. Another great episode. You can all catch us next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. In the meantime, make sure you watch that Super Rugby on Sky and you get all the analysis on RugbyPass.com. Almost forgot it there for a second, didn't I?
You got it there.
It came out. Okay. Mā te wā. See you next week.